Hey everyone, this is Jaden Hydara, aka Spidey Fan 101, which is a bit ironic for the video at hand, but hey, it is what it is. And I'm here today to finally, yes finally, talk about the DCU and DC Studios in this brand new series that I'm doing titled DC Studios Talk, aka DCU Talk. Now, yes, it has been a while since I've made any videos, well, just in general, but also for DC. The last couple videos that I made was in 2024, jeez Louise, with Blue Beetle, or my late at the time review for Blue Beetle, and my talk about the DCU in general and how I thought it was going to be a great success and special, which thankfully turned out to be, true and had some merit, and I'm happy about that. But today I'm going to talk about everything that I missed with the DCU and everything that I missed talking about now that we are in the midst of this universe starting to grow and starting to thrive and starting to really, get its feet off the ground. So without further ado, let's get started. So I first want to, I'm not going in order in terms of this stuff, but I do want to first talk about Superman, because that was the movie that I wanted to talk about for a little bit now. And now I finally have the energy to. I'm not going to get further into that, but now I finally have the energy to talk about it. So, Superman. Now, in the video that I made, I talked about how I was really looking forward to Superman and how I thought that this iteration of Superman was finally gonna be the one to nail Superman for me, because despite a lot of the animated iterations of Superman, Superman live action never really did it for me. Besides Christopher Reeve, Superman Returns, Superman didn't really do it for me. He did it for me when I was a kid, but not in these modern days. Snyderverse Superman, again, same thing, did it for me as a kid, but now he was a really bad Superman in my opinion. Like, he was just like he was terrible. I call him Struggle Man these days because I can't call him Superman with a straight face. But the only ones that I really vibe with was Arrowverse Superman and My Adventures with Superman, because those were the iterations of Superman that finally got the ideals down when it comes to Superman. Because obviously the most definitive iteration of Superman is the one from the Timverse. I called it the Tim/Dennyverse back in the day, but I know now it is the Timverse, my bad. Although they should both get credit. But yeah, it's that iteration of the character because obviously he's the most true to form iteration of Superman. But in live action, I really want to get that iteration of Superman that really gets all the fundamentals down. And, also, My Adventures with Superman is amazing. Go check out his show if you haven't. He is such a great modern interpretation of Superman. But when it comes to this movie, when the trailer started coming out, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling it. Obviously, I was a bit worried, not because of the quality of the film, because I always knew it was going to be great, but because of the fact that, again, I just really want that iteration of Superman that's really going to finally be the one to do it for me. And, the teaser trailer came out. It's funny because I didn't like it. I didn't like the teaser trailer at first. I watched it when I first woke up on that day. But then, when I rewatched the teaser trailer over and over and over, saw it in front of a couple movies, saw it in front of Sonic Movie 3, and in front of all these other things, I was like, you know what? This trailer is incredible. It's amazing. And I genuinely think now is one of the best teaser trailers to come out in modern day. And then the sneak peek and the second trailer and all this to say, the hype was building for the movie. And then I finally saw the movie. I have to say right now that this Superman movie is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. I truly, truly, truly love this movie. I came out of it with the biggest smile on my face, and I absolutely loved this movie. And the reason why is because, again, I have to look at the expectations I had going in, right? The definitive iteration of Superman in live action that would finally get the fundamentals down, that would get everything right about the character, the fundamentals right about the character. And this iteration of Superman absolutely did it for me. David Cornsweet as Superman is the definitive live action Superman. He really is. Like, he carries all of the gravitas and excellence of Tim vs Superman, while at the same time having the charm and the likability of Arrowverse Superman, while having the action and gravitas of, well, having the action, gravitas, and honestly the punk of My Adventures with Superman, while having the heart and soul of Christopher Reeve's Superman. And then putting it all together like a fusion of sorts, and you have DCU Superman. And I thought they did an amazing job, bringing this iteration of Superman, DCU Superman, to life. And, it really speaks to, this movie also really speaks to, James Gunn really getting the fundamentals of Superman. Like, I never understood why he didn't want to do Superman at first, because it's like he got the vision, he got the narrative, he got everything, honestly. In terms of like Lois, I thought Lois was really cool. I've never been able to see Lois Lane in any of the other iterations of the character in live action. Like, the only one that got close for me was Arrowverse Lois. Like, I thought Snyderverse Lois was atrocious. Not only because she's played by one of the most overrated actresses of all time, but because of the fact that she didn't feel like Lois. Like, that was the most damselified version of Lois in all of existence. Like, yeah, it was not good. So getting this iteration of Lois that got all of the characteristics down, while also having like some similar like characteristic similarities to like Arrowverse Lois, I thought was really cool. I really liked Rachel Brosnahan as Lois. Like, she's definitive casting for sure, and I really appreciate her as the character. Nicholas Hoult as Lex was on a whole nother level. This is the best iteration of Lex I think we're ever going to see, that we're ever going to get, because this iteration of Lex is a savage, even more savage than any other iteration of Lex that we've seen, even worse than the most definitive iteration of Lex, which is, the Timverse, while also being kind of worse than Lex from My Adventures with Superman, because the Lex from that show was very like hardcore, and we're talking about a Lex that that had Superman's heart and literally crushed it. That kind of crazy imagery. And this iteration of Lex is still crazier than him. Like, on a philosophical level, on a moral level. Like, the stuff he was doing in this movie, I thought was absolutely insane. And it was the best kind of insane, because, again, like, this is Lex. Like, that bit, like, no other iteration of Lex has been able to capture that business side, as well as the maniac side, as well as the tortured side. None of them have ever been able to get it right until this iteration of Lex, which was great. The Justice Gang I really liked. Of course, my girl Izzy as Kendra Saunders. she was great. She was really great. I cannot wait to see her in this universe even more. I've been a supporter of Izzy ever since the Nickelodeon days. I've said that. You can check my channel and see the receipts of that. I've always been Izzy's biggest cheerleader. And so to see her like thriving in this new DC universe like really like genuinely makes me happy. And I hope she sees continued success. Green Lantern. Now, I've always been a fan of the Green Lanterns. Obviously, those who know me and know this channel know. Well, maybe not know yet, but will come to know that Jessica Cruz is my favorite Green Lantern of all time. Like, I love her in the comics. She's amazing. My first introduction of her was in DC Supergirls 2019, and I love that iteration of the character, especially because she was my like gateway to getting to know her more. And you know, I just love Jessica altogether. Like, she's my favorite character in DC. But you know, I also love Hal Jordan. John Stewart I think is cool. I liked him in the Justice League show, but I honestly have been more of a Hal Jordan fan. So for me, you know, seeing that Guy Gardner was the first Green Lantern to be introduced in this universe was, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little weird to me. Because, you know, I have some memories of him, like the Green Lantern animated show. It's been a while since I've seen that, but I used to be a huge fan of that show. I gotta rewatch it. It's been way too long. But, you know, he was never really my favorite Green Lantern, or even one I really paid that much attention to. So seeing him in this movie as the first Green Lantern introduced to this universe was a little weird. But I still thought he was really cool. You know, Nathan Fillion I think is really cool, really nice casting for Guy Gardner. I think he's going to be great moving forward, although he is kind of a jerk, but that is Guy Gardner. So, yeah. But yeah, the castings were great. The story I thought was incredible. And I think what really speaks volumes with this movie is how it kind of speaks to the times. Like, one thing that I've loved about all of James Gunn's DC projects is the fact that all of them really, like, in their own ways speak to the times. Like how corrupt our systems are, how these like bigger nations like kind of trample, well, not kind of trample, they trample all over smaller countries and territories, and try to take their livelihoods away, take their lives, take their land, take their history. And this is something that speaks to our present day a lot, especially because of the current conflicts going on in Gaza, and you know how Israel is just being absolutely terrible and undefendable, inexcusable towards Palestinians and everybody, and how, you know, all of our big like ruling governments are just trampling all over their own people. And so to see this movie, Superman, tackle these issues is not only amazing, but it also really speaks to the character. Because Superman, of course, is an immigrant, and he is a big supporter and a big protector of not just all people, but especially immigrants. And so to see that side of him in this movie, that unapologetic side of him, was really a breath of fresh air to see. And it's not like the DCU so far has been foreign to, you know, this kind of commentary. You know, the Suicide Squad, literally, they trampled a whole group of dictators and liberated Corto Maltese. You know, in Creature Commandos, the same thing. You know, they were going in and taking out this princess who looks like an angel, who was a future wannabe dictator. And, well, I don't know if they liberated the land per se. They didn't really focus on that side of it. But they did, save the future from becoming dystopian and from being taken over by this one dictator princess. So, the DCU is not foreign to this kind of commentary. But to see it be put on like the biggest scale it has been put on yet is really wonderful to see, and I applaud everyone who worked on this film for really honing in on that and really diving deep into that commentary. And that was one of my favorite parts of the movie, for sure. And I really hope the DCU continues this kind of commentary, not to the point where it gets formulaic, but it never gets old seeing commentary about this, especially when it's as relevant now as it's been, when these stories release. So it's always good to get this kind of commentary. I hope they continue it. Overall, though, I absolutely loved Superman. This is definitely the most definitive iteration of the character in live action. And I'm really happy to finally be able to say that about an iteration of Superman. Because, for years we've had to settle for Elseworld takes on Superman. Or Superman, but he can only show up for like 2 episodes of a 26 episode season. Or, a Superman that is not a part of a shared universe or anything like that. Or a Superman who's done terribly and we have to just cope with the fact that this is our Superman. No. Like, we finally get a prime definitive iteration of Superman who has all the fundamentals, who is a part of a shared universe, who is a big part of said shared universe. We finally have all the best aspects for Superman, and I'm so happy to say that. So overall, I'm gonna give Superman a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love this movie, every decision that it made, and I'm really excited for the future of this iteration of the character in this universe. And now, speaking of that, we must flip to the other side of the coin. Supergirl. Now, in total, we've only seen Supergirl for about a minute of screen time so far. That being the end of Peacemaker Season 1, and then Superman. And of course, her movie comes out June of next year, and I'm very excited for that. But, as far as everything we've seen from her, it definitely fits in terms of where her story begins in the Woman of Tomorrow storyline, which again is amazing. And I'm really curious to see how it's gonna go. And then with the inclusion of Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, which is going to be awesome, and seeing how their dynamic could be in the movie, which we haven't seen a single frame of it yet. We probably will by the end of the year, but as of right now, we haven't seen a single frame of the movie yet. But I have no doubt in my mind it's going to be amazing. So, yeah, in terms of everything we've seen from Supergirl so far, I think it's looking promising. Obviously, for me, there is a high pedestal when it comes to Supergirl because, obviously, Arrowverse Supergirl is one of my favorite characters of all time. And that show means so much to me. And that iteration of the character means so much to me. So, yes, this iteration of the character has some heavy shoes to fill in my eyes. So, we'll see how it goes, but I definitely trust the DCU to deliver when it comes to Supergirl. As for the future of this Superman Saga, which I'm so happy we're getting a Superman Saga, yes! The announcement that we got earlier this week about Man of Tomorrow, which is technically the sequel to Superman. I know James Gunn likes to say that it's not a sequel to Superman, but I mean, we speak facts over here on this channel. So, you know, with the introduction of Man of Tomorrow, which is coming out in July of 27, you know, we see Lex in his battle armor for the first time in live action. Well, not for the first time, but for the first time, comic accurate wise in live action. And we also get to see this kind of matchup looking, or not matchup, but team up look when it comes to how he looks alongside Superman. I think it's going to be interesting to see where that goes, because, you know, everybody's been talking about, oh, Brainiac. I mean, I don't know, it would be cool to get kind of like a Superman Unbound-esque storyline where Superman and Supergirl go and they discover, you know, hey, there's this guy called Brainiac out there, and he's got a history with us Kryptonians, and he's a pretty big deal, so we need to get all of our heavy hitters going to stop him. It would be pretty cool to see, and especially to see like this pair up with Lex. It's going to be really interesting, because obviously they are not on good terms. As a matter of fact, with how Superman ended, Lex's blood was basically boiling, you know, with the fact that, you know, he failed to stop Superman, and basically with one look made it his life goal to destroy Superman and everything he knows and loves. So to see the next movie where they reunite be a team up of sorts, I'm not gonna lie, it is interesting. It's interesting to see, and with the enthusiasm that James has shown with the Superman Saga so far, and how he wants to build Superman's story over multiple films. It's like I said before, in the first video, before how I phrased it with like the evolution of his logo. I don't necessarily think now it'll be the evolution of his logo, because it looks like the logo that he has is here to stay, which is totally fine. I mean, I love the logo, but it'll definitely be the evolution of his story through, obviously, the journey that he goes through, right? Because, you know, from him having this bombshell of twist with his parents and the message that they sent, the true message that they sent to him, and it being the antithesis of everything he stands for, to really having that conversation with Pa Kent and being like, hey, you know, it's your actions that define who you are, your choices, and what your parents said, it does not define you. You define you. And so, you know, him learning that, and then truly aligning himself, definitively aligning himself with humanity. And, you know, now having this bond, this connection, and this wanting to serve the people of Earth as much as humanly possible, to now having this story where he has to side with a guy who he doesn't hate, but he absolutely despises everything he stands for. This is the same guy who killed Manbi. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, but he killed him brutally when he didn't even do anything wrong. It's the same guy who risked the world just to take him down. This is the same guy who locked up innocent women, innocent men, innocent children in a pocket universe to where they can never escape. When it comes to immoral and irredeemable, you know, Lex is the closest you can get So him having to team up with Lex and be like, hey, whatever the threat is, we're gonna have to team up. And what's interesting is it doesn't seem like they're going to be alone, because I don't know how Woman of Tomorrow is going to go. I know it's going to be an adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow, but it's not going to be a direct adaptation. So they will make changes. And I highly doubt that, purely on a synergistic level, that Kara would not be there, especially if the villain of Man of Tomorrow is going to be Brainiac. I highly doubt that she wouldn't be there, especially to get her vengeance on this creature that took out everyone she knows and loves in front of her with her own eyes. Like Injustice 2 style. So literally, there's no way she's not going to be there, especially if the villain is Brainiac. But also with current comments being made, it seems like both Kendra and Jon Stewart are going to be in this film. So it's going to be interesting to see what this movie shapes up to be, especially if Kendra and Jon are in this movie. And it'll be interesting to see, depending on who the villain is, how this story pans out. Like, I'm very curious to see what this could entail, especially for furthering the story of Superman, especially furthering the story of Clark, furthering the story of Kara, and furthering the story of Lex, and seeing the journey that he goes on. Whether he decides, now's the time to redeem myself and maybe lean into the present arc a little bit, maybe an adaptation or live action iteration of one of the best DC movies ever made, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, please, 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 please. Or will we go the Super Friends route of, after this, whatever happens, he's going to super lean in on being a villain and go like, I'm forming the Legion of Doom style arc. Like, we'll see how it goes, but I'm very interested in the Superman Saga and how it's turning out so far, and I can't wait to see future developments when it comes to this and when it comes to Superman in this universe. So yeah, everything is coming up Superman as I predicted, and I love it. I love to see it. You go, Superman. You go, Superfam. Let's get it. But yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is the future of Blue Beetle. Now, as I mentioned in my Blue Beetle review, I absolutely love this movie and love this iteration of the character. I love it so much. And James Gunn has been talking about for years about how eager he is to bring Jaime back. And obviously, as someone who loves this film, I'm eager to see Jaime back. And he's made like one appearance since the movie, which is in that dream sequence in Creature Commandos, where he's kind of like dead with all the other Justice League members, but he's like way in the back. Like, you could barely see him in that scene, so I don't really think that counts. But in terms of developments, we know that there is a Blue Beetle Sequel Series being worked on by literally the exact same people that were in charge of the Blue Beetle movie. So that's exciting, and I can't wait to see this because, oh man, furthering the story of Jaime, of my guy Jaime, my girl Jenny, and the Reyes family. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see this story continued and to see where we leave off from the last film, because again, there is the post-credit scene of, us having to see what happened to Ted Kord and the big question mark of what is going on with Ted Kord. because obviously Ted, it was believed throughout the movie that he was dead, but because of that post-credit scene, no, he's very much alive. And so I think that the story of this sequel series is answering the question, what happened to Ted Kord? And Jaime and Jenny going out there trying to find whatever signal he sent to see where he is and get him out of whatever predicament he's in. And then kind of having that, like, how the MCU did Ant-Man style thing, but this time potentially with Ted Kord and Jaime. So that would be cool to see. And then having that reunion with Jenny and Ted will be interesting to see. And it will be interesting to see if Jenny has any, like, negative feelings towards him. She definitely would, because of all the abandonment issues that she has in relation to him. I mean, it's obvious that Jenny loves Ted because, of course, you know, he's her father. But, you know, with the abandonment issues that she has with him, I would love to see that dynamic, that story of, is Jenny, when they find Ted again, would Jenny be quick to just forgive all of the abandonment issues, all of the things that, you know, all the things that made her sour towards him? Is she willing to just forgive those things and be like, you know, my father's back, yes? That would be interesting to see, because I would love to see that personal drama of it and to see, like, where that goes, and kind of Jenny and Ted, like, rebuilding their father and daughter dynamic, which I think would be interesting to see. And then seeing Jaime become more acquainted to becoming a hero, especially the hero of Palmera City, because in the first movie he was very inexperienced. Obviously it was his origin, but he was very inexperienced. So in the years that we haven't seen him, like, I would love to see, like, how he really refined his skills. You know, how him and Kaji really, you know, got to becoming a symbiotic pair, and how they're, like, really on the same page at this point and really getting to know, like, how to work together. We saw that towards the end of the first movie, but it'd be really cool to see how that dynamic furthers on, you know? And, you know, I just can't wait to see, I just can't wait to see Blue Beetle's story continue in general. And then the meetups, the crossovers. For one thing, I need Jaime to meet Superman. I need Jaime to meet Clark, because ever since he mentioned Clark at the, like, during in his film, I haven't been able to get that image out of my head, especially, like, that scene from Graduation Day where he graduates, I think he graduates high school, either high school or college. I don't remember which one. And then when he's celebrating with his family, Superman just comes down and is just, like, you know, chilling and having a good time and talking to Jaime and congratulating him about graduating. I need that dynamic with him and Superman. I need that. Also, go read Graduation Day if you haven't. That is such a fun comic. I love that so much. But speaking of Graduation Day, if we get future seasons of this Blue Beetle Sequel Series, I think it would be cool to experiment with other scarabs potentially being on Earth or out there in the universe, because in the Blue Beetle opening sequence, in the opening credits, it was very clearly going over the other scarabs and how they are scattered throughout the universe. So I would love to see how, if we do get, like, other hosts when it comes to these scarabs, like, what other characters we could potentially see, because having, like, that invasion that happens and really building to that would be really cool. And it would be a cool way to further tie in Jaime to the rest of the DCU. To say, like, if that invasion happens and Palmera City is like really in the thick of it, then we could get the Justice Gang. We could get Superman. We could hopefully, if we get Jessica in this universe and Senor Gunn, James, I am begging you. I am begging you. Please introduce Jessica. I know that you have Guy and Hal and John to deal with right now, but please, please, please introduce Jessica. I am begging you. I know you're giving her a show in the My Adventures universe, which I'll talk about later. I'm very excited about that. But please introduce her in the DCU. I am begging you. I'm begging you. But hopefully when we get Jessica in the universe, she can join in and be a part of that whole thing. And that could be how Jaime eventually joins the Justice League, when the true Justice League is formed. Which, again, I really want to see that. I want to see Jaime join the Justice League. I don't think he's quite a fit for the Justice Gang, because the Justice Gang, as we've seen in Peacemaker Season 2, and just the DCU in general so far, they are not the best in terms of, not just in terms of being a group of heroes, but in terms of morals, in terms of demeanor. Jaime just doesn't seem like and in terms of, like, because they're corporately sponsored too, I just don't see Jaime joining a group like the Justice Gang, especially with how Jaime wears his sleeve, how Jaime wears his heart on his sleeve a lot of the times, and is a very morally strict hero. So, I just wouldn't see Jaime joining the Justice Gang, but I would see him joining the Justice League once we get Clark, once Bruce and Diana, and once the Justice League is formed, that's when I can see Jaime joining a team. But overall, I'm so excited. Even though we haven't really got as many developments or updates on this sequel series as of late, Solo Manwenya, I'm so sorry if I butchered his name, he's been very vocal in terms of giving us updates in terms of what's going on with the show, in terms of what he knows. And he's talked about how he knows, like, the group of animators that's going to be working on it. He obviously knows the director or the showrunner now who's working on it, because he was literally the director of the movie. And he's talked about the possibilities, like the further possibilities of what they can do now that the story is going in the direction of animation, because of how limitless what they can do is compared to what they were able to do in the film. So I'm really excited to see how Jaime's story can continue to build and grow and thrive, and I'm really excited to see Jaime return whenever he makes his full return, whether it's when the show comes out or whether it's in somebody else's project. Technically, it was in Creature Commandos, but it was obscured in the background where you couldn't really see him. So again, that doesn't really count to me. But regardless, I can't wait to see Jaime again, because this character, this iteration of the character, has just become one of my favorite characters. Not just in the DCU, but of all time. I love this iteration of the character so much. So I can't wait to see him again. And I can't wait to see his story continue to grow and thrive. But moving forward, I want to delve now more into the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos side of things. Now, I have a whole video that I've already written about the Suicide Squad because I've never talked about my love for that movie on this channel, but I really want to, because my relationship with that movie, it is not complex, but is very like personal to me, and I would love to talk about that in a video. So while I'll give my general thoughts on it right now, I love it. Again, one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, I will delve further into my thoughts on it in that video I'm still planning to make. That'll probably be episode 2 or 3 of this series. Right now, though, I want to delve more so into the current story that's unfolding with, you know, the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker, and Creature Commandos. So, in terms of this, I really like the direction it's going in. Like, obviously, the Suicide Squad really planted its flag in terms of the impact that it had on this universe, right? Not just with everything that happened in Corto Maltese and Task Force X liberating Corto Maltese from their dictator government and fascist government, them defeating and killing Starro and taking him out of the equation, you know, them just walking away and being, you know, able to walk in the sunset. I forget. You know, them just being able to walk away, live the rest of their lives freely, and being able to get away scot-free. But the biggest thing, of course, to happen that's had ripple effects across this side of the DCU has been the death of Rick Flag Jr. Obviously, this death, oh my gosh, I couldn't tell you how insane I felt. Wow, the insane reaction I had seeing him die in the Suicide Squad the first time I watched it. It was such a heartbreaking moment, and it made me hate Peacemaker. I was like, screw this guy. You tell me this is the guy that's getting the TV show? I'm not watching that. I'm not watching a show about them trying to make me like the guy who killed Rick Flag Jr., when he was trying to do the right thing and expose the government for their evil actions. But then the Peacemaker show came out and it made me like Peacemaker. Oh man. But this is a choice that has had a serious ripple effect on not just Chris Peacemaker, but on, you know, Rick Flag Sr. And in Creature Commandos, obviously we realize how much this has really destroyed him, not only as a person but as a father. You know, having their child ripped away too soon from this world when he was trying to do the right thing. He died trying to do the right thing and fight for the right cause. And so, you know, now that we're in Peacemaker Season 2, and, you know, he is actively pursuing Christopher for everything that he did, not just in betraying Rick Flag Jr., but also killing him in cold blood. Obviously, I mean, you know, I'm good with Chris now, but that doesn't change the fact that I am absolutely on Rick Flag Sr.'s side. Because ever since the Suicide Squad, I was like, man, take him out! And then they make it even worse with this most recent episode by revealing the fact that Rick Flag Jr., and Harcourt had a relationship before the events of the Suicide Squad, and that is why in Season 1, Harcourt had such a visceral anger and resentment towards him, which makes things even crazier. And so when it comes to this whole story going on between Rick Flag Sr. and Chris, I don't know how far it's going to go, especially because it seems like it's going to come to a climax with Peacemaker Season 2 and how it's going. But all I know is I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Not to mention how likable of a character Rick Flag Sr. has been so far. You know, I know he's had his issues. He detained Superman. He tried to stop the creature Commandos from taking out the princess because, you know, he was, you know, having a romantic relationship with her, which, you know, I don't blame him. I mean, did you see the princess? But, like, you know, he tried to stop them from taking her out and from saving the future. Actively sided with the stalker and creep that is Frankenstein's monster in this universe. You know, so he's had his faults, but ultimately I genuinely think he's a really great character, and I'm really happy to see that he is sort of the Nick Fury of this universe, and he has been the visceral through line of it thus far. And I really like that, seeing how the Suicide Squad has had this ripple effect when it comes to this side of the universe, how it's affected Amanda Waller and everything that has happened with her once Adebayo exposed her at the end of Season 1 of Peacemaker, how it affected her in Creature Commandos because she's like, well, I can't use humans anymore, but hey, they didn't say anything about monsters. So, how, you know, the Creature Commandos are, you know, involved in this. And then how I could imagine the Waller show would go with her facing congressional hearings and kind of being on, you know, the piss end of the stick when it comes to the governments of the world, and being like, hey, Amanda Waller, you know, you gotta pay for this stuff that you've been doing, because, you know, this is highly unethical stuff here, you know, because we saw firsthand she was using these people in the Suicide Squad, criminals or not, as pawns, to the point where she would blow their heads up if they did not comply with the mission parameters. Like, this is some unethical stuff. And so, you know, going off of the original description of the Waller show and how, you know, it was described as Waller teaming up with members of Team Peacemaker, which I could only assume is Economos, because of the fact that he's the only one in the 11th Street Kids that are still working with Argus. And maybe Adebayo, because of the fact that she is Waller's daughter. So that would be the through line, like thematically speaking, and kind of finding a way out of this whole predicament that she's in, kind of being like a political thriller of sorts. Which, you know, once they get that show off the ground, I'm really interested to see how they do that. But yeah, overall, I love the story that's unfolding. Not to mention, you know, I just love every single project in this side of the universe. Like, the Suicide Squad is one of my favorite movies. Forget superhero movies, one of my favorite movies of all time. I've literally watched the film 30 plus times. My favorite character in the DCU so far is Cleo. I love Cleo so... When I tell you I love Cleo so much, I mean it with every ounce of my being. I love Cleo so much, and I need her back. Not to mention the fact that I actually had brief interactions with Daniela Melchior, I'm so sorry if I said her name wrong, on Instagram, to where when I posted my review, well, my thoughts on the movie on Instagram way back when, not only did she like it, but she commented a heart emoji on it. And then I made a comment on one of her posts, and then she interacted with me once again with the same heart emoji. So, me and Daniela, we got history, some good history. So, literally, please, James, please bring her back. Please bring Cleo back. I don't care if you have to bring her back in whatever is going on with Batman. We'll talk about that later. I don't care if you have to bring her back in the Waller show. I don't care where you have to bring her back. Just bring her back. Please. I'm actually begging you. I love her so much. But, I love all the members of Task Force X. With Creature Commandos, I absolutely love that show. Literally everything about it. The storytelling, the characters, the bride is the absolute best. Cersei was cool. I can't wait to see, her future ties with Queen Diana, as I call her. And seeing, please let Adria Arjona be Wonder Woman. Please, 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 please. I'm predicting this right now. I'm making this prediction right now. It has to happen. It needs to happen, or I'm going to be a very sad camper. Please let Adria Arjona be Queen Diana. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Please. But I'm curious to see what her dynamic would be with Queen Diana. Seeing as to how that movie goes and what story they give Queen Diana, whether it's an origin, which I highly doubt it would be an origin, but just based on whatever happens in Queen Diana's story, I'm curious to see if Cersei makes a comeback in that, breaks out of Argus and creates trouble where Queen Diana has to deal with it. As well as, of course, Rick Flag Sr., who I also, I've said it before, how much I love him as a character. And then, Team Peacemaker, So, I love this side of the universe, and I can't wait to see how it goes. Again, I'll delve more into my love for this side of the universe in the Suicide Squad video that I will just record and edit and put out there. But yeah, I love it. And of course, Peacemaker Season 2 is going great right now. I'm absolutely loving the direction it's going in. The story of Chris kind of being in an unsatisfactory position in his life right now, to where things aren't really going right for him. He tried to join the Justice Gang. They basically laughed him out of the room in the most petty way imaginable. But hey, the best part, at least we got a scene where Izzy was talking about her butt, Hey, it's an R-rated show. I can comment on that. Plus, I had a crush on her since I was like 15, okay? Give me some leeway. But, at least we got that. Also, just with his relationship with Harcourt and not going well, especially because of the revelation that, her and Rick Flag Jr. had a history, and a romantic history at that. So that just makes things 10 times more complicated. Not to mention 11th Street kids just going through it in general. The only one that's not really going through it right now is Economos, because even though he hates his job at Argus, he's still making it, Like, he has this dynamic with Argus, he was involved with the stuff going on Creature Commandos, so he's got some tenure, he's got some status. Not that much status, but he's got status. And he's still on Amanda Waller's good side. So, he has that going for him, even though he doesn't really like his job. Adebayo, her relationship is in shambles. And also, I gotta talk about this. Why was her girlfriend so hung up on not going back to Gotham? Does she know what kind of city Gotham is? You should be happy you're not in Gotham. Like the place you're living in right now, you working at Jitters Coffee, making coffee for the Flash? Come on. Like, what's not to love about that? But, regardless, it's, I found that ridiculous. But either way, she's not with her girlfriend. Things are just... And then, the only one that's really, really happy right now is Vigilante. Because, people say he's crazy, and he absolutely is. But he is the one, factually, who is the one that is just the most in this love and life stage. When you look at his demeanor, when you look at everything he's going through right now, he's the one that's the most fine out of all of them. But with all of that in mind, Chris and, being at this point in his life where he feels like he's just kind of giving up on the life he has right now, him going to this other universe that James Gunn calls Earth 2, we're going to have to talk about that. And living this life where his brother is alive and where everything seems to be going right, I found it really compelling because, especially with how, not even just with the parallels with everything that Chris is going through and his really traumatic childhood and him not being taken seriously as a hero, his time as a villain, his redemption arc in season 1 and him wanting to become a real hero. And then everything that happened in the Suicide Squad. Not even just with those parallels, but I feel like even with real life. There are so many people in this world that feel like, their life is just not going the way they want it to. And if there was this magical Monsters Inc. style door that they can go through, Monsters Inc. Shazam style door, to where they can go through it and live the best version of their lives, like they would take it. And I felt that as well, and that's the thing narratively that I've really loved about Peacemaker Season 2, and it's James Gunn using the multiverse to really tell this personal story about not really survivor's guilt, but the fact that he's really telling this, he's using the multiverse to tell this story about being unfulfilled with life and wanting to escape and having the best, wanting to escape to another plane of existence and having a life that you could be proud of, but, realizing through whatever means that this life, no matter how messed up it is, no matter how unsatisfactory it is right now, is really the best outcome that you can have and really the best way you can move forward. Because even with everything that has went wrong in Chris's life, I feel like he's going to have to realize that even though he has his brother, even though he has this version of Harcourt that he can fall in love with, he still has Adebayo, he still has Eagly, he still has Vigilante, no matter how crazy he is. He still has Economos, who even though he's playing for both sides, still really cares about him. So I think this season is gonna do some really interesting things narratively that I feel like will really resonate. Not just in terms of these character arcs, but also on a very human level. I think that's something that James Gunn has always done really well with all of his stories. So I'm really excited to see where the story goes. I've seen all of the Earth X theories, and while yes, I am starting to subscribe to them, because this third episode in particular was really leaning in just a tad bit into Earth X. And I think that That was really cool. The only Earth X story that I've seen is obviously the Arrowverse one, where they traveled to Earth X. Now, the reason why I don't say this is Earth X, and this is the biggest thing that I have in terms of the confusion of where the DC multiverse lies right now, is because of the fact that, again, if it was Earth X, it would have to be the same Earth X that we saw in that Crisis crossover, because of the fact that they established there is no other Earth X. Not unless, like the Flash movie, did something really, really significant to the multiverse to the point where it changed multiple things about multiple universes. Like, even with that, I would still like some clarification in regards to that, because I'm starting to become a little confused in regards to where the multiverse lies, especially with James Gunn on the Peacemaker podcast calling this universe Earth 2. Especially because Earth 2 in the DC media multiverse is the universe that Stargirl lives in. So I am a bit confused on that. We're going to have to get some clarification. But for right now, you know, in terms of the story of Peacemaker Season 2, I am really on board for the story that they're telling. And just this side of the universe in general, I absolutely love it. And this is how you tell a Suicide Squad Task Force story. Not that crap that we got in the Snyderverse with Suicide Squad 2016. Get that out. Get that nonsense out of here. This is the real deal. But yeah, moving on from that, I also love the fact that there are full-blown character sagas in the DCU. This is something that I was really worried that the DCU would never really do, because they've been very, and to DC Studios' credit, they have been really focused on, you know, standalone stories and really making these stories like work as individual movies. And that's something that I've always praised about DC Studios, especially in that video that I made all those years ago. But as a fan, as a DC fan, there's a part of me that's like, you know, I still want to see like where the character saga is at, you know? So with the Superman Saga, with this whole Task Force 11th Street Kids saga that's going on, with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker and Creature Commandos and Waller, and then the side of like Blue Beetle and his movie and his show, and you know, all of these character sagas that are starting to materialize in the DCU. I genuinely think it is really cool that we're starting to see this, because like having those like character-centric sagas is something that I feel like the DCU can do extremely well. Heck, it's something they're already doing really well with the character sagas that we already have. So I think it'll be really cool to see, especially when we start getting characters like Queen Diana, like the Flash, like Aquaman, like whatever's going on with Batman. Again, I'll talk about it. I think that it's a really exciting prospect. It's a really exciting prospect, especially with the character sagas that we have right now. I'm really excited to see where it goes. And now I want to talk about the Green Lantern side of the DCU. Like I said before, I've always been a fan of the Green Lanterns ever since I was a kid. When I was younger, I actually really liked the Green Lantern film with Ryan Reynolds. That was my gateway to Green Lantern. And then I started watching things like Green Lantern First Flight, the Green Lantern animated series, Green Lantern Emerald Knights. And, you know, I absolutely loved all of that. And of course, like I said, my favorite iteration of Green Lantern is Jessica Cruz. I love Jessica Cruz. I love that girl so much. But when I was a kid, growing up, my favorite was Hal Jordan. Now, me growing up with the Timverse, I thought, seeing John Stewart in there was cool. And, I really like John Stewart, but to me, he was never on the level that Hal Jordan was at. And so for me, I was always really excited whenever I got to see Hal. And so when we come to the Lanterns in the DCU, obviously I talked about Guy Gardner earlier when I was talking about Superman. But, I think it's cool, getting this Lantern show. Because for one thing, the feel of it, I really like. The True Detective style thing, I think is cool. Having, really delving into the fact that Green Lanterns are intergalactic cops. That is something that no iteration of Green Lantern has really tackled in media before. Ironically, the only one to do that was Jessica's episode, Jessica-centric episode in DC Supergirls 2019, when she was taking the stand for how she dealt with an alien threat on Earth, and she was taking the stand on Oa and defending her actions, how she dealt with the situation. That was really the only time where I feel like the Green Lanterns were treated like cops or the judiciary system of the universe. So the fact that we're getting more of that in the DCU, I think, is really cool. And focusing on the fact that, this is not an origin for the Lanterns. This is they're taking a case on Earth. And while I'm not 100% sure if this is an origin for John Stewart, it might be, because it seems kind of like the Timverse, John Stewart is going to be the one that we're going to be focusing on the most when it comes to this show. And again, I think that's really cool because, putting more of an emphasis on John Stewart, because everybody knows Hal. Everybody knows Hal. So we don't need an introduction on Hal. But, putting John Stewart in the mainstream again after Justice League and the Timverse gave him that spotlight all those years ago. I think it would be really cool to have John, kind of have the spotlight. And it would also be really cool to see if we're going along the same lines that the Timverse did, if Kendra and John actually have or form a relationship in this universe. I said in the video that I made all those years ago that I wouldn't see that happening because of the fact that there's kind of an age gap between Aaron Pierre and my girl Izzy. But, Izzy has been very, clear on the fact that she would love to do it. If the opportunity presented itself, she would love to tell that story. And I think it'll be really cool to see that in live action, especially because in the Timverse, I thought that was one of the coolest aspects of the Justice League shows, was the relationship between, or the growing relationship that happened between Kendra and John. So seeing that in the DCU, I think would be excellent. Excellent to see. And then, in terms of what we could see, in terms of a trailer, I hope a trailer comes out soon. For me, I don't want DC to rush anything they're doing. They're on such a great trajectory right now with quality storytelling. Take as much time as you want with literally everything. And, we'd be all the better for it. But in terms of a trailer, I think it would be good to get one maybe towards the end of the year. Kind of do a double tap when it comes to when we get the Supergirl trailer then like kind of like a couple days later, maybe add like a Lanterns trailer or teaser trailer on top of that, or maybe an official poster. You know, that would be cool. But also I forgot to mention, I absolutely love the casting of Hal and John. Aaron Pierre. Again, I have not seen Aaron Pierre in anything. The only thing that I've heard him in is Mufasa as Mufasa. And, you know, he's a great voice actor, I can tell you that. But in terms of anything like with him in the flesh, I haven't seen any of his like live action roles. So I think it'll be fascinating to see how I feel about him in the role. And then Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan, I think is genius casting. Kyle Chandler, low-key, has a lot of Hal Jordan vibes. Like when you look at him in interviews and everything like that, I think he legitimately feels like he would be a great Hal Jordan. And so him being Hal, I think is really cool. Like, again, I'm more of a Hal fan than a John fan, just in terms of those two. So that's why I'm more excited for Hal than John. But again, we'll see what happens. Overall, I'm really looking forward to this show. My only definitive want for Green Lantern in the DCU is Jessica. Give me Jessica yesterday. But don't just introduce her out of the blue. It has to be an origin, because her story is way too good to not tackle in the DCU. So yeah, that's what I want. Now moving on to Clayface, which, I mean, I was debating whether or not I would talk about this like towards the end, when I start finally talking about the Batman side of things. But you know, I'll talk about it now because it has enough ties to Creature Commandos, especially, to, like, you know, justify it being talked about earlier. So Clayface, I love the story of how this movie came about. The fact that they weren't even thinking about making it, but the fact that Mike Flanagan, of all people, came in with a script that was so good that they decided to just make it. I absolutely love that. The fact that they can just read a good script and be like, this is so good that we are going to make this right now. I love that. Like, this is the type of creative freedom that I have been itching to see in superhero media again. Like, the MCU could never, I'm telling you, the MCU could never just make a decision like this, to the point where they see a script that's so good that, you know, they just decide, make it right now. Literally. Like, I'm just so happy. And then the set photos that we've been getting, the casting announcements, the fact that this is going to be a rated R body horror. Now, I don't particularly like body horror movies because they gross me out and disturb me to my core. Like body dysmorphia and, you know, the body like contorting and being, well, not contorting per se, but being like mangled and changed, and like I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm gonna have to deal with it this time around though, because again, it is a DC movie and it is, you know, Clayface, so I'm gonna have to deal with it this time. But that is the main reason why I didn't watch a movie like The Substance, despite how everyone talks about how good that movie is, because I do not like body horror movies. I just don't. You know, I watch a lot of movies. I go to the movies every single week. I watch big movies, I watch smaller movies, and I look forward to both. More specifically, smaller movies, but I look forward to both very much so. But out of all the kind of movies that I watch, there are only two things that are a definitive no-no for me. And that is demonic horror movies and body horror movies. I can't handle either of them. So for me, that's it. But Clayface to me seems like a great, kind of exception, because of the fact that I am rooting for DC Studios to make more movies like this. Not necessarily like Clayface, but more movies with the freedom to just greenlight movies that aren't even a part of their so-called 10-year plan to get to Justice League, but to genuinely just make movies for the fun of it. That's what this is for at the end of the day. Yes, we love our overarching narratives, and we love the prospect of seeing the Justice League form. But, it's also to get genuinely great movies. And I love the fact that we're getting a movie like Clayface, I don't really have any exact speculations or anything of the sort when it comes to this movie. The fact that we have a Clayface in Creature Commandos and this Clayface, which one this is or if they're the same character, who knows? But I guess we'll find out when we see the movie. But it's just really cool to see this and how this movie came about. So I'm rooting for it to succeed in every single way, and I cannot wait to see it. And now, the second to last thing, Queen Diana. Now, let me tell you guys something. I love Queen Diana so much. This is a character that, to me, is so important and so special. Queen Diana has been done so dirty by DC, by Warner Brothers. Firstly, they had a good thing with the Snyderverse when they had She Who Shall Not Be Named playing her in that one movie, in that first movie, and having Patty Jenkins do it. And we thought that was going to be Wonder Woman's comeuppance, her much needed comeuppance. But then, She Who Shall Not Be Named turned out to be a genocide sympathizer. They lost their way with Wonder Woman 1984, even though I do really appreciate Wonder Woman 1984 as a movie more so than most people do. I can see now what I didn't see before in the fact that technically making Queen Diana a rapist is not the best thing to do. That's an understatement. So, that iteration of the character died off with that universe. And honestly, I'm just going to say it, for the better. It's not that iteration of the character's fault that the person that played her turned out to be a terrible person. It's not that iteration of the character's fault that the director kind of lost her way. And it's not that iteration of the character's fault that universe did not know what to do with her after a certain point. And so for me, having this new beginning with her in the DCU, having Adria Arjona play her, and having these seeds planted Themyscira and the status of it in the DCU, how people don't really believe it exists, but there is there are known Amazons that are out there in the world, like Cersei making herself known, and some Amazons being discovered in the world to the point where news channels can make active sketches of what an Amazonian could potentially look like. You know, it's got a really good standing so far, and whether this film that Anna Guerra is writing turns out to be an origin story or just straight in the thick of it of Queen Diana's story, I think it will be really fascinating to see, and to see what kind of iteration of Queen Diana we're going to get, because I know we're going to be getting more than just Queen Diana getting the spotlight. We're going to be getting Queen Diana's sister, Nubia, I believe her name is. We're going to be getting a lot more Themyscirans getting more screen time and more relevance in the universe. I hope that we end up seeing, now forgive me, I do not remember this Amazonian's name, but you know, the Brazilian Wonder Girl that was introduced in previous years, I would love to see her. I think she's a cool character, and it will be fun to see them like have different ambassadors of the Wonder Woman mantle, and how they can show like, hey, it doesn't just have to be Queen Diana that's Wonder Woman, like anyone can be Wonder Woman. I think that would be like kind of like the Spider-Verse mentality of like anyone can wear the mask. You can wear the mask. Like how, you know, they could have, you know, any like Amazonian be like, hey, you want to be Wonder Woman? Be Wonder Woman. Like obviously Queen Diana would be the prime Wonder Woman, but any Amazonian that wished to be Wonder Woman and follow in the footsteps of Diana or even forge their own path can do so. I think there's really interesting places they could take Queen Diana's story and the story of Themyscira and the Amazonians. And it's going to be really cool to see. But my only need is to have Queen Diana be played by Adria Arjona. Now, there are a lot of definitive fan castings that I have seen. I've seen May Calloway as Queen Diana, and she would be great. I have seen Melissa Barrera as Queen Diana, and she would be great. But the most definitive casting that I have seen thus far is Adria Arjona. There is just something about Adria Arjona as Wonder Woman that just feels right. And they cannot pass this up. I'm telling you right now, if Adria Arjona does not end up playing Wonder Woman, I'm going to riot. I'm going to riot, James Gunn. So please, let's just make it happen. Let's just make it happen. Adria Arjona has said that she would love to do it too. So let's make it happen. And now for the final part of this video, in which I will kind of air my only grievance with the DCU, my only real grievance with the DCU, and that is Batman. Now, I've said it in the original video that my main concern with this universe would be Batman. And it wasn't because of executions, because of how they chose to go about Batman. Now, James Gunn has said for a while now that Batman is the hardest pill to swallow when it comes to the DCU. And again, I think there's one, and you know, that's understandable. Like, Batman is not the easiest character to get right, as we've seen with many recent iterations. But for me, my problem isn't necessarily that. my problem, and yes, whereas I said I wasn't with this in the original video, I have sort of been convinced otherwise, and I have kind of changed my mind on this. The fact that they are leaving the Batman to dry. Now look, I'm going to go into this more when I am finally able to start up my favorite sagas series. When it comes to the Batman, this is the iteration. I did a bad job of talking about this in the first video, but I'm going to clear it up now. The Batman is my favorite iteration of Batman in all of media. There is not a single iteration of Batman that I love more than this iteration of the character. There's not a single casting of the character that I have vibed with more than Robert Pattinson. And yes, maybe it's because I'm a Twilight boy. I grew up on Twilight. I love Twilight, and I've always seen, hey, I could see Edward Cullen as Batman. Maybe that's why. But even then, like, this is the iteration of Batman that made me fall in love with the character again. Because after the Dark Knight trilogy ended all those years ago, and we started getting Batfleck and all these other iterations, I was like, I was soured on Batman for the longest time. I had forgotten why I loved this character, because there were so many iterations that just didn't get it. And, you know, the 2000s, I think, was peak, because my favorite animated iteration of Batman is the 2004 show, ironically also titled The Batman. That is my favorite iteration of Batman in animation. So for me, the 2000s were kind of the 2000s, early 2010s were the peak for Batman iterations for me for the longest time. That wasn't until we got the Lego Batman movie, which before the Batman was my favorite Batman movie of all time. But, you know, there were just so many iterations of the character that just didn't get it. And I had fallen out of love with Batman to the point where I didn't even consume most of his media anymore. But then the Batman came out. And I just remember sitting in that theater, being in absolute awe, seeing this character that I have loved so much ever since I was a kid on the big screen, finally back with the fundamentals intact, with the love and care and attention put into the filmmaking, the storytelling, Bruce's character arcs, Selina, you know, the entire world and mythos of Batman, and it being treated so immensely well with the Batman. I had never experienced anything like it. I haven't experienced anything on that level since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, since the Amazing Spider-Man films, since the Batman 2004 show, like since like the peak eras of superhero media that we all remember, like from the 2000s, from the 90s, from those eras. And the Batman, to me, it is my favorite comic book movie of all time. And I just love that movie so much, and it made me rediscover my love for Batman. And so while I originally thought that it would not work in this universe, because of the fact that, you know, we wouldn't want it to have to be bended and contorted to have to follow this vision of a shared universe. Oh yeah, and also I forgot to mention, the Penguin was great too. I really enjoyed that show as well. I didn't get too connected with it personally, because I viewed the show as purely an observer. I didn't get like super involved with Penguin's arc in the show at all or anything like that, because, you know, I don't root for villains, unlike some people that watch this show. But I mean, I did form a liking to Sophia Falcone. Yeah, I did form a liking towards her. I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I thought it was a great show, and definitely deserving of these like prestige labels that it has been awarded with, and how it was a great like spin-off of the movie. Not a sequel to it, but a spin-off to it. I really appreciated that. But this is not a video centering on the Batman. I'll probably give the Batman its own like show on my channel, because that's how much I love it. I could just talk about it as itself. But whereas I originally thought it wouldn't work in the cinematic universe, then I saw Superman. I saw how this iteration of Superman had the Batman equivalent, but for Superman. Even to the point where both Batman and Superman had these major twist arcs with their parents not being the people they think they are, having an identity crisis, and then them both realizing that they define, the heroes that they will turn out to be, not anyone else, not their parents, that they define who they are. The thematic parallels of that, along with the fact that when you really like watch these films back, like if you watch the Batman and then you watched Superman and you saw the character arcs they both went on, and you could genuinely see how, if the Batman was DCU canon, they would genuinely be like rich storytelling potential for them to grow along with each other, for them to grow as heroes, to grow as friends, to grow as partners. Then the prospect just became undeniable. Now there's two things I want to talk about in relation to this. For one thing, the prospect of a DCU Batman. Now listen, I would love to have a Brandon Sklenar Batman. Yes, a Brandon Sklenar specific Batman, because he is someone to where I just look at him and I see Bruce Wayne. I watched Drop earlier this year. It's an okay movie. I recommend you guys watch it. But every time I saw Brandon Sklenar act in that movie, I saw Bruce Wayne. And that was the movie that sold me on him being Bruce Wayne. So if we were to get a Brandon Sklenar Batman in the DCU that is fantastical, that is focused on him being a father to the Bat family and to Damian, and focusing on Talia and Roz and, all this other stuff, fine. I wouldn't like it as much as the Batman, but at least I would have a Brandon Sklenar Batman, someone who I also see as Batman, being Batman, in movies that I can see will be at least enjoyable. But I know they'll never be on the same level as the Batman, but they will at least be enjoyable. But with the sheer amount of weirdness and disorganization that is going on with the development of DCU Batman, I'm even more worried about Batman right now than I was originally. Because for me, you have this perfect iteration of Batman right there. Like right there, his story's still developing. In the Batman prequel book, they established that there is a Superman, or there is a Metropolis in this universe. And then, like, there are newspapers, like, on the set of... There were newspapers that were on the set of the Batman that confirm that there is a Superman in this universe. So there's your in right there. Not to mention the fact that it will be a perfect example of the differing tones and stories that James Gunn was talking about early on, because of the fact that you have this Gotham that is not as realistic as a lot of people say it is. Like, the only people that say it's realistic are the people I'm convinced that haven't watched the movie in like 2 to 3 years. Like, watch that movie again and tell me that it's too realistic, like it's The Dark Knight 2.0 or something. It's not. And then you have the definitive iteration of Batman and the definitive iteration of Superman in the same universe, and they can grow and thrive together. And then you pair that with the definitive iteration of Wonder Woman, played by Adria Arjona, and there you have it. You have the DC Trinity, all three definitively casted, and all three of them have the workings to grow alongside each other and really have that like familial, brotherly, sisterly bond that they have in the comics and in other forms of media. That is the dream timeline. That is the dream alternative. But there is the other side of it that we have to talk about. The other side of the coin, and the reason why I originally said that, you know, I wouldn't want it, and that is because of Matt Reeves himself. Now, even though this prospect is something that it would be such a tremendous shame to pass up, I understand that at the end of the day, this is Matt Reeves' vision. This is Matt Reeves' iteration of the character. This is the iteration of the character that he birthed, that he put his heart and soul into, years of his life into. And I understand that he wants to craft it in the way that he always intended it to. And for that, I absolutely respect and I absolutely honor. And at the end of the day, that is what I want for this iteration of Batman. And for Matt Reeves as a storyteller to tell the Batman story that he wants to tell. Even though I am very passionate about the fact that this opportunity cannot be passed up, I want to make it very clear that I am 100% a supporter of Matt Reeves' vision. But this is exactly why this Batman situation with the DCU is something that I really was worried about from the beginning, because of this exact thing. We already have, it's like everybody, the general populace is so tied to the Batman to the point where any other iteration, like, we just can't see it. Yes, a Batman played by Brandon Sklenar that is fantastical and in DCU and with the Batman, it would be amazing. Especially if we have the chance to give Leslie Grace a second chance as Batgirl. Right, I'm telling you right now, after you guys absolutely took that and stole that from her a couple years ago, you guys owe her that chance to play Batgirl in the DCU. You owe her that. So Leslie Grace should absolutely be reached out to and asked if she wants to have the role. You guys owe her that. But regardless, if we have that chance, that's absolutely great. But again, you just can't get over the fact that they have a perfect Batman right now. And even with Clayface shooting, there are still perfect ends that you can use to fit the Batman in seamlessly. Sure, there will have to be some retcons. Sure, there will have to be some things that will be explained, but even then, there are perfect avenues to where you can explain it in universe and it would still work. Like, that's why this Batman situation is so, like, God bless James Gunn and God bless Matt Reeves, because this decision, this whole Batman thing, this whole Batman debacle, it can't be easy. But God bless them, because, you know, I hope that they figure it out. I hope that they understand that this is an opportunity that cannot be passed up. And even if we don't get the Batman in the DCU, which again, I want to emphasize, I'm fine either way. Yes, I will be slighted, and yes, I will be less excited for Batman in the DCU, especially if he's not played by Brandon Sklar. Because one thing I've come to terms with is the fact that no Batman iteration will ever be the Batman for me. That is something that I've come to terms with. And the Batman is my Sam Raimi Spider-Man, is the Amazing Spider-Man for Batman. And at this point, I've come to realize that he'll never be topped. And that's okay. Those are heavy shoes to fill, and I do not expect them to be able to do it. And that's okay. But, you know, God bless him, man, because the situation can't be easy. And I hope that they realize, and I hope that they come to some kind of understanding to where Matt Reeves can still absolutely have his vision, but at the same time, we can also have the definitive Batman take part in the DCU, while still having all of the narrative excellence and brilliance and elegance of the stories that he's had so far. So yeah, and that is the end of the topics that I had for this first episode. Man, this is a long first episode, but hey, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. You know, if you made it to the very end, I appreciate it. I will be coming out with episode 2 later on. Again, I'm not going to put a date towards it because, again, nowadays I kind of have to be in the mood to make YouTube videos. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is in my current circumstances in life. But this was definitely great. And I can't wait to make more episodes and talk about the DCU going forward. So yeah, I am Jaden Haidar, aka Spidey 101, saying peace. Have a magical day.
Tänk Sven hur gott det ska bli i himmelen. Du har en skiva, du klurar när du följer mig. Följer en blir på andra smöret. Men spelen funkar men det var det där. Har ingen respekt för främlingsgränser. Då ska du dansa tätt på vår tempo. Ja, du ska dansa rumpa till du ska dansa rumpa till du dör. Ska dansa rumpa till du dör, till du dör. Du ska dansa rumpa till